Hello, my beautiful light beings. Welcome back to the Magic Exists podcast. I have a wonderful guest here today. Her name is April Curry, also known as Akashic April. She is an Akashic Records and intuition development coach who actually taught me how to read the records back in 2022. So welcome, April.
Dani, it's so good to be here.
Yay! It's been amazing, a beautiful journey. So the first question I want to ask you is, what is your strongest clair, and how does that represent in your life and in your readings?
Yeah, so I'd say when I first started, clairsentience was my first strongest clair. Clairsentience is feeling, intuitive feeling, and through feeling, I have knowing. So I like to use the two. They're kind of at the same level nowadays, where I'm feeling into knowing, and that's claircognizance, and also knowing into feeling. So that tends to be the pattern that I'm in. But I really like both of those clairs together. They're very accurate, and knowing is probably the scariest intuitive ability to have because there's no rhyme or reason. There's no cushion for it. You're just literally saying outwardly whatever you're getting with no words, nothing, no images. It's just like blah. So it's hard at first, but it's my favorite one. So.
I love that because for me, like when we first started, our trainings, I didn't know any of the clairs. I didn't know any of that. And I was like, oh, I see this, but I feel this. And I was saying those words, right? Like, I know this, I feel this, I see this. And you were like, oh, yeah, you're claircognizant or you're clairvoyant. I was like, oh, whoa. And oftentimes people think like, oh, once I see the pictures, like that's the psychic world, right? Like, oh, I have to see the pictures. They're telling me, I'm hearing the voices. But
Yeah,
actually, it's like tuning into what we already know, our gut response, our intuition, our knowing. And what you said, like, that's actually the most accurate.
yeah. And imagery for me, it was like my third one. It took me a year to get a clairvoyance, which is the sight. And I feel like sight shows up so differently for each person. Everyone thinks that you'll see something outwardly or like you'll see this grand vision. I see granular vibration. It looks like sandpaper. Sometimes it's a feeling that I see something. So clairvoyance can show up in a lot of different ways too.
I love that you said that because my clairvoyance, which is seeing the pictures, the image, the story, mine isn't very clear either. Like, I'll get like a glimpse of it, and I do get like some coloring shapes and stuff, but it's more blurry and it tunes more into like my knowing. And I
Mm.
asked a couple friends, and they're like, "Oh no, it's crystal clear for me. It's like it's like third dimensional, like, or it's like so high tech." I was like, "Oh, whoa!" And I always felt kind of like, "Oh yeah, that's not like I don't have that," but it's cool to hear. You have claircognizance, or sorry, clairvoyance, but it's like a more granular and sand like image. And then you are just like expanding on that, connecting and
Yeah,
using your other clairs to like find the story or the message that's meant to come through.
totally. And I think it's so important to learn all of them. Hey, we have the ability to learn all of them. It just takes practice. Every person, no one's more intuitive than the other. The more practice, the more that you believe you have all of them, you can have them piggyback off of each other. So you're never left in just one and just guessing. You can go off of the other one, and the other one is just setting the intention with the energy, and the energy speaks with you and to you about the information. So
I love that because in the beginning, I would just ask questions and random clairs would come through, and I didn't really know like what I was going to get. Am I going to get an image? Am I going to get a feeling? But it's interesting now I can like call upon it. Like I'll ask the question, some things will come in, but I'm like, okay, wait, show me a picture then. And then it's like, ooh, this forms or solidifies. And then, oh, give me like a feeling. And so now it's like I feel like I kind of call upon them because there's so many different gifts.
yeah, I love that. I'm so happy for you.
So I want to talk about how we started this. And I don't know if people know like my story, but I had done Reiki. I had already done Reiki when we started this. So when I found you on Instagram, I literally just searched. And that week before, like how things come into my awareness, how they are divinely channeled is they come to my awareness, like whether through a podcast, someone says it, a book, like just a non-coincidental, because I don't believe in coincidences, but a divinely shown, a way of appearing in my life.
Yeah.
And so the Akashic Records came in a book, and through an old tenant and through a podcast. So within the same week, I was like, okay, this is like, there's something here. And I looked on Instagram, like, let me just find someone who's going to give me an Akashic Records reading. I found someone who did it for free, who she was in her like practicing stage, like kind of like how I did it in the beginning.
Mhm.
And she was like, you need to open the record. So like within like a week and a half period, I then went on a deep dive and found you. And I love that you do your Akashic reading in a Reiki bubble. And I just really aligned to your energy. And I was like, from the time that that like thought was came into inception to when I booked you, I feel like it was like 2 weeks that I was like opening my records, but I just felt so drawn to you. And I loved the one-on-one space that we had because there was no like rules. It was like, okay, ask this question, let's go. And I was just pulling all these things and you were just affirming for me. So it wasn't like XYZ, you need to do this. It was like, oh, that's this. And you're divinely being drawn to this feeling or this image or this message. And then you would help expand on that thing. And I actually really, really loved that. But I want to ask you, you were doing one-on-one for a while and you moved into group. Can you expand a little bit on that? Like maybe the benefits, the differences, and why you decided to move into groups?
Yeah, I love this. I first taught the Akashic Records one to one as I felt each person opened up the Akashic Records very differently to, put them in a group and to not experience the individual aspects of how people open the records felt in a way that I needed to experience that. So I trained about 100-ish people individually before I put it into a group, because after a while I started to see all the similarities and differences. So I have a big base on the multitude of ways that people open the Akashic Records. The other thing that I did after I taught people the level 1 Akashic Records is I'm like, hey, if you want to continue doing one-to-ones, we can experiment together and go into more advanced stuff and find more information in the records in various ways, healings, etc., channelings. And I had about 50 people that did that with me, and we worked together, some of them for 2 years. And we created modalities within the Akashic Records that I haven't seen anyone do. It's literally based off of these 50 individuals. So bringing people into a group in the first Become an Akashic Records course, which is the first level, it's 8 weeks. It comes with 2 one-to-ones still. So they still have that one-to-one time, but they're able to see each other and see the variety, because when you're just one-to-one with me, we are getting to the point, we're getting to like you're opening the records. But when you're seeing 5 other people opening up in various ways, it expands you. You can see, oh, they did it in this way. I can do that too. It's possible. The other thing that comes up is when they are reading for each other, because they have to read for each other too. So they get 6 other people to read. And instead of hearing the teacher being like, oh, they're like, of course my teacher's going to say I got it. They hear it from people they've never met before that are unafraid to just be like, yeah, that wasn't resonating, or that was. And so they're getting tons of experience on top of getting 2 one-to-ones still. So prior to doing group, I would do 4 one-to-ones in the course. Now I do 6 group sessions and then 2 90-minute one-to-ones. So it's still very, it's very diverse and expansive. And then the advanced Akashic is everything that we invented together. So it's another 8-week course. And that one is like, you're really doing the work. That is a whole other scale. And the purpose of the advanced Akashic is to let people know that we've only touched the surface of the Akashic Records as a collective. We haven't really done much with the Akashic Records. So showing them that we can create modalities, that we can go into different dimensional spaces and see different forms of intellect and information, it expands each person to go into their own individual innovative expression in the Akashic Records.
I think that's where the magic is. I love that and I loved how you infused the individual with the group, because when we were practicing, your like homework was like, you need to go in at least 4 to 5 times a week for like at least 30 minutes to an hour. And I developed this like beautiful self practice. And that's how I opened like my trance channeling, my light language, because it's like I was taught that this is the foundation, to find your own essence of the Akashic Records. And I want to tap into a little bit of what you said about, as a collective, we haven't actually tapped into the vastness of what the Akashic Records is. Because after your course, and I know we've talked about this, but I've been doing like DNA activations, and like galactic integrations, like all these things within the records. And I think that's like where my magic is like lying, on the healing portion, the past life healing, all the things. And is there anything like you can talk about that you're open to? Like, how can the collective like tap in more to this like Akashic record magic?
Yeah, this is the best part. So the more that you attune your energy, your frequency, your consciousness to the vibratory plane of what is the Akashic Records, you're able to tap in and access many things. But for each individual soul, the information that they're tapping into is the things that they have an affinity for, or that they have a love for, or that they're working through in this life. So if you have, let's say, Albert Einstein was a scientist, guess where he was going to get the information? He was going up into the Akashic field to pull that information that was technically what he loved. And that's the beautiful thing about the Akashic Records. The information is driven by the frequency of love. So if you're getting like, what is your life purpose? Well, I'm an intuitive here to activate people into their intuition. You're going to receive the infinite information on that topic in the Akashic Records. And the other thing about being someone that reads other people, if you don't have a love for a topic, but you're reading someone that has a love for that specific topic, you're now receiving information that you would have never received before based off of that person's love. So the Akashic Records is also making us like highly intelligent human beings. And that's what I'm saying, like, we haven't even touched the surface, because people think like the Akashic Records is this like space and woo land, the woo woo. And it is, but it's for everyone. It's for someone to become a better mother. It's for someone to become someone that's here to help society and find new systems and ways to make the world a better place. It's here to create heart-centered communities. It's here to find new innovative technologies that exist in other planets. It's all up there, and we're not utilizing it to its fullest potential right now.
I absolutely love that. And so I've only been in the record since we met in 2022. And I want to ask you how long you've been in it. But since only those 2 years, and with my, I guess, like quote unquote rigorous training, and like how much I go into it every day. Like I'm in the records every day. Like my intention is to access that wisdom through every interaction and experience I have in this daily life, to bring in that frequency of unconditional love to every interaction that I do and every experience, and use that as a portal for my ascension and my evolution. And I feel like I've regulated my nervous system, I've healed relationships, I have like brought in that love, that partnership, that lifelong partnership. I've done so much since opening the records, and it's so, just imagine, I can only imagine what you can do for more than 2 years in this. So I'd love to hear about like a little bit about your story, how you got into it, and like how long you've been practicing this. Because I will say, once after our session, you were like, oh yeah, on Saturday I was in the records for 8 hours and I should probably get out more. And I remember I was like, what? Oh, like that's amazing. But also, wow.
You know, okay, I will go into my story, but it's interesting what journeys the Akashic Records has you go on. That year in particular, it's like stay in them all the time, every day. And I'm like, okay. And then there were years where it's like, okay, keep it kind of open, but be a human. And so it does actually look a little bit different every year. But I started, what I'm trying to say is I'm not in the records for 8 hours a day. More like 2 hours, and then readings and trainings. But I started opening up the Akashic Records mostly because I was so empathic, like that it was impossible to have a regular life. I was at that level of empathy. I didn't know how to control energy expenditures, output, input. I was very dysregulated because I did have a really tough childhood. And that tends to be a similar case for a lot of people who are intuitive. Not everybody, but that happens. So I spent a lot of time living in the woods, meditating and camping and drawing because I didn't know what else to do to regulate. And I spent about 7 years doing that and just kind of being like, okay, the world doesn't get it. I'm just going to do this and start deep diving in what I can do to find a way to regulate. So my suffering actually led me into Reiki, and I got a Reiki session from this lovely lady, and it felt like the thing. It helped me regulate. I felt really good. She's like, you should learn how to do it. I learned how to do it, and when I got attuned to Reiki, which is the ceremony, I started to see, hear, feel things that I'm like, am I going in? It literally, I had my intuitive awakening, and I wish someone taught me intuition while I learned Reiki. So I was in a bit of a space where I didn't know anything. This was around 2017, 2018. And I ended up going into a crystal store because I was like, well, they have sage. Like, I think I need to get sage. That was about as much as I knew because I was all Zen meditation, nothing spiritual, really just Zen. And I met this woman in there and I'm like, are you a reader? She's like, yeah. I'm like, can I get a reading? She goes, sure. And she kept saying, in the Akash, my grandmother says, and I'm like feeling her go up into the records. And I'm like, oh, that's her grandmother. That's crazy. And I was feeling every time she would in the records and she would tell me things about me that were all accurate. I'm like, what are the Akashic Records? Because I felt an affinity immediately when she went up in them and said that she was in the records. And she's like, you need to get out of the woods and read more, excuse my French, effing books. She was very like direct. She was Afro-Cuban. She was lovely. She ended up teaching me how to read the records. And then I opened up my business in Maui to just do Reiki. And the reason why this is so long-winded is because I really want people to understand how cool your life purpose is. You know, you can, when you're opening the Akashic Records and they tell you what your life purpose is, it was clear. I was supposed to help people find who they are and their connection and help people in that way. And I was like, cool, I'll just keep doing Reiki and I'll keep learning how to read the records so I can grow. And I got also told in the Akashic Records, you need to go to a party because you're not socializing. And I'm like, okay. I go to a party. Someone's like, I've always wanted an Akashic Records reading. And I'm like, okay.
No way. What
Yeah.
are the chances?
I was so shy at that time. I was, coming out of the woods. I barely could speak. The records helped me communicate, learn how to communicate, learn how to have confidence. I was still moving out of that. And my friend goes, April does that. And I'm like, no, I don't. She goes, yes, you do. I'm like, I'll do it for free. She ended up getting the reading. She donated the exact amount that I had in my head that I would charge for it. And then one person turned into four people turned into, I didn't do anything. I didn't even start a business. I literally just took off because when you're in your purpose, and that's why it's so important for people to learn how to read the Akashic Records for themselves. If you are in your purpose, everything in the universe is always co-creating for you to land into it, like effortlessly. And all you have to do is follow the breadcrumbs, and that's it. And that's so long-winded, but I would say 2017, 18, I was opening them when I was a kid, didn't know it. I was in them pretty often when I was a kid.
I had that same experience, like just being in the classroom, like going into past lives and stuff, but not really, just thinking I was daydreaming.
Yeah.
People be like, hey, pay attention. It's like, oh, but this world's over here is better.
Yeah. And, it's crazy because kids like you and I, like, I don't know about you, but as a kid, they thought I had ADD and I was just off in space doing things that were important to me. So, yeah, there was a little bit of that, distractions and things like that. But sometimes people who are misdiagnosed like that at a young age, it might be because they are a medium or an intuitive that isn't regulated.
It's so wild because I think kids, they have that like they don't have those limitations that are like stopping them, like, oh, I can access this other realm, or there is a realm that exists that co-creates life with you. I was in Yosemite this past summer, and I have a little cousin, she's 11. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go meditate every morning. And she was like, I really want to go meditate with you. I was like, okay. And so I did little meditations of bringing her into the records. And the things she would see are what her perception or her, capacity is like, she was like, I was seeing fairies and they were taking me here. And this like teddy bear, it was like really sweet, but it was like, she had this whole story she told me after. And I was like, that's amazing.
I love that. Oh, I love kids. They're just cute.
Yeah, seriously. So I want to ask you, I know you're moving into now like also offering mediumship trainings. I haven't tapped into that yet. I know what that is. I know I have that gift,
You
but
got
I'm
it.
still very mastering, the Akashic Records, the Reiki, the energy, healing. But if you were to describe mediumship as it is different from the Akashic Records, what would you say?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of don't let me program you. It looks a little bit different for each person. I'm going to conceptualize like a human right now. So this is how I view it. I love God. So for me, God, universe, very top, white light energy. Akashic field this is a high vibration. Akashic field is right under that. There's this feeling of feeling very uplifted. And the information is, to me, like wispy, channeling, direct, and there might be some words, there might be a little bit more words. So the lower you come down to your crown chakra, now you start to come down a little bit lower. And how I view mediumship is you can tune into the energy of anything, not just people who passed away. You can tune your crown chakra into the Akashic Records, someone's passed away, guides, a business, a relationship, a human. But ultimately, I view mediumship as using your crown chakra to tap into things. So mediumship is a little bit lower to your crown chakra, and it makes things a little bit more human. There's more things to conceptualize. It gives the brain, the human brain, more to process. So it feels like it has somewhere to land. Because sometimes when you're up in like God land and the Akashic Records, the soul is like, but for some people, they're humans like, what do I do with that? What do I do with that information? So having the mediumship realm there allows someone to kind of bring it down a notch so they can process it. They have more information and context, and their brain and their humans like, okay, I can work with that. A good example, let's say that and I'm going to use life purpose again. Let's say you're up in the Akashic Records. I usually like to go to God first, like, hey, God, what's my life purpose? Is like, be present, love everyone. I'm like, okay, thank you, God. Then you go to the Akashic Records and it's like, there's more context because it's a little bit lower and you're here to activate people to help them see their truth, to empower them to get into their connection. Great. What does that look like? And they might show me an image of me like going to people doing lectures and all those things. And then I ask my higher self, which is in my mediumship land, hey, higher self, give me some more context on that. What are some directions you want me to take? And she has a good sense of humor and everything. So she lands it in more of a humanistic way. She's like, oh my gosh, you need to do all the things. Remember to celebrate your life, though. Don't be just, all is knowing April. Like, also be a human, like, interact with people like you're a human. And I'm like, okay, great. And then from there, if I'm doing a reading with somebody, I like to have a human to human conversation about all of it. So it's kind of just like the stepping stool. But there's a bunch of ways that you can do mediumship. I like to do mediumship kind of in a channel-y way. The other version that I like to do is I like to just sit in someone's energy bubble, like their aura, and start seeing what pops up and just letting it kind of toss in, kind of like impressions. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a little sadness. Okay. And if I sit in the sadness, I can actually go up into the Akashic Records and ask, what's making them sad? So then you're using it from down up and then up down. It's really fun.
That's cool. So you're like in all the you're very multidimensional, like using all the dimensions to
Yeah.
access that wisdom.
Yeah. And I teach it. So, and it doesn't really matter what order you learn things, but in my intuitive membership, I just threw the whole mediumship course in there so people could just start getting intuitive because there needs to be nothing getting in the way of someone learning this. it's so empowering, and it's so meant for everybody. So yeah, the mediumship course is in the intuitive membership, just there, like whenever you want to take it.
I love that. So what I want to expand on intuition. Like you mentioned, like you wish someone taught you intuition while you were learning the Reiki, and you mentioned that you think everyone trusting their intuition will help harmonize society. We talked about this a little bit before we turned on record, but
Yeah.
for me, intuition is like, despite what mainstream is telling us, like listening to what our needs are, our desires, our curiosities without like those limitations or confines.
Oh yeah.
But for you, what is this intuition? And like, how do you teach people this in your course?
Yeah. So with intuition in the membership, I teach the basic intuition. It's really important to learn all the clairs, like I said. So right now I'm teaching everyone how to learn all the clairs. And we meet every Thursday for that. Then I have the mediumship stuff in there as well. We're still doing live mediumship courses in there. It's learning how to read your relationships, learning how to see what your soul wants in a relationship versus your human. You can also see, like, am I in the right career? Tuning into that, feeling into that for yourself, and being able to be your own inner authority instead of hearing what the world wants you to do and what it thinks you should do. When you're gauging and feeling into your intuitive abilities on what you need and what your wants are, you're sitting in your power, you're more effective, you can create a space and energy that can help so many people. On top of that, for people who are dysregulated, like when I was a kid, I didn't have a role model. I didn't know what was, I kind of knew what was right and wrong, but no one taught me that really. I had to, I was always looking on outside of myself to find what was right or what was wrong. And once I started to do this, it was like, oh, I know who I am. I know what my energy is, and I know what I'm capable of. And so if anyone nowadays, like, not even nowadays, if someone's like has an opinion, I just smile. I'm like, okay, because there's proof in the pudding. There's proof in doing the intuitive work, feeling into the heart, and moving through life in the heart. The other aspect of why this is going to harmonize society is, let's say like everyone's tuning into their heart. Their heart is their connection to everything. And so if you get in your ego, you lose your connection. And then you have to sit with the suffering of, oh, I'm not in my heart, I'm not in my connection. And there's a feeling that comes with it. The more that you do it, it's almost like, why would I ever want to do that? So in societal like systems, you have people that are being more in integrity. You have people that are less crime rate, and you have less learning disabilities, because a lot of learning disabilities come through trauma. So if you can clear the trauma, the learning disability can go. Not always the case, but possibly. Also, it optimizes health. I had a very low functioning thyroid. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I was also diagnosed with misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression, and I had an eating disorder. I had all these things, and they thought I had ADHD. It was this whole thing, and none of it was true. It was just I had to move trauma out. And when you can move that out and regulate a human being and keep them in their heart, it harmonizes them, and then it harmonizes the world. Oh, yeah.
I love that so much. And I have a similar experience where I went through a time like right before I opened the records where I had like a meniscus tear. I had a hyperthyroid. My adrenals were slow. I had like kind of lower liver function. Like I had a couple things that were like I was still fine, but things were like kind of popping up on blood tests and stuff, like to kind of be aware of. And so like all I did to change my lifestyle was enter the Akashic Records, which expanded my, self-love, unconditional love, heal that judgment about myself, which is like often that judgment is what causes sometimes that trauma within us, that like dysregulation of our nervous system. And how I tested this like physically was I went on an 11-mile backpacking trip to Havasupai that year, like 2019, before I did the records. And it was so painful. I could barely walk. Like it was such a beautiful trip, but like my body was like failing.
Oh,
And I went again last year after being in the records for like a little over a year, no pain at all. I had all this energy. And not only was I like 4 years older and stopped playing, like I wasn't working out, I wasn't doing all of those things, but I was regulated. I was connected to the divine. I had
yeah.
love for myself. And so physically, I saw the results, but then I went back to do all the blood tests and the energy testing. And they're like, oh wow, you're like perfect, not perfect, but like
Yeah.
you're good, you're good, like you have nothing to worry about, you like don't take supplements, don't, like you're good. And it's like so wild that just the energy of love can heal you. But I want to preface this by saying, like, don't bypass, and obviously there's a lot of steps I took to get there, but it was tuning into my emotions, tuning into the things that triggered me, tuning into all the things where there was like disruption and pain in my life. And I sat with that and I reflected upon them. And through the records, they gave me guidance and advice which ultimately led me to just that frequency of love and transmute all
Yeah.
that fear and pain into love.
That's awesome, Dani. I love that for you. That's great. And you can see it too, the glow. You have that vitality glow from the records. I love it.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. I feel like I always see that about you, about all your things. I'm like, she's on it again. I love it.
I do want to share, this is recent. I'm really excited about it and happy about it. It has to do with optimizing health. I'm really big into brain health and learning. I learned all the brainwave states. I actually got a full brain scan of like what's going on in my brain. And I had so much alpha, which is a meditative state, and then I had a lot of beta, and that's thinking mind. And the doctor said, the only reason why you're like so okay and calm is because you have so much alpha. And they pretty much told me that I needed to have more SMR and that my theta was low. SMR is kind of blending beta with alpha. It's kind of like that focus state that artists get when they draw or you're reading book. And they said my theta was low. So I decided to open up the Akashic Records. They gave me a whole protocol. But instead of doing their protocol, I opened up the records and I was like, well, let's start with theta, which is funny because I thought was an easier feat. This seemed like a little bit more like it would take time. That was my guess. And a year later, I went to them and they rescanned my brain. They're like, this is insane. I'm like, what? They said, usually, SMR is a very easy thing to like adjust and move through. Like you still need to work on that, which I wasn't working on that. I was working on theta. They said, we have never seen someone's theta move ever hardly. You moved it in a year. What have you been doing? And I'm like, I went up to the Akashic Records and I asked the Akashic Records to put me in a theta brainwave state. And then I just sat in it like it was massaging my brain. And they're like,
That's amazing. It's
yeah,
like I just want all my listeners and our listeners to know that like you can do anything.
oh,
You can shift anything, like anything physical, chronic illness, even subtle, like this. I want to get my brain tested. I want to, that's so cool.
yeah. And you can see who's going to get like, who has the possibility of getting dementia. Like you can literally go in the Akashic Records and heal all that. The reason why people have looser ligaments is because their brain's tired. And so when you see what's causing the brain to get tired, you can just literally go to the records and fix it.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it so much.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit, I want to shift a little bit into business because when you
Yeah.
first started, you said it kind of just happened. It kind of just opened up and people were coming to you. And I wouldn't say that was my similar experience. I feel like I definitely did, I guess, like the slow build, like building the foundation, calling in the clients. But as of now, like for my aligned clients, I call them in by singing to the ocean or talking to the ocean. Like that's how I market. if there's someone who's wanting to create their own business and be, an entrepreneur, spiritual entrepreneur, how do they access their aligned clients? Or is there any advice that you would have for them
Uh,
about that?
there's a few things. There is one thing where it's like, I will say it's not sitting around. Definitely not. It's not like it just comes to you and you sit around. No, it's a little bit of both. It comes to you, and then it's up to us to take the action on the information. But with calling in aligned clients, I actually sit up in the Akashic Records and I ask, what type of clients am I supposed to attract? I don't assume that I have the idea. I'm always asking the universe because it also shifts. It's not always the same. It'll change every couple of months, a little bit. It also shows me like where it's heading. So I am building for the present and building slightly for what's coming in later. So that's how I know what type of clients are coming in, and then I ask the Akashic Records. So it's me just asking the records, okay, what do you want me to do today? And some of it seems really silly. Like my human thinks it's silly. Like I'm like, you know what? I think I need to do like 3 lives this week. And it's like, no, make a Reiki video. Like, really? And then 400, like usually my Reiki videos or my videos on YouTube are like 100 views and my Reiki was 400. When I was directed to go into I was directed. It said, go do Clubhouse back in 2020.
I remember.
Yeah. And that was like one of the most craziest aligned experiences I've ever had, where I went and I watched everybody on Clubhouse. I'm like, oh, this is what they're all doing. I'm going to do that. And I got on there and it bombed. It was not good. And then I went off there. I'm like, oh, hold on. I didn't ask. What do you want me to do? And I was like, go in and do Akashic Reiki meditations, channeled messages from their guides, free, and then do readings after. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I went on there and went from 0 people, maybe 2 or 3 people, doing it the way everyone else was doing it. And it was at 70 people the first time I ever did the thing that it told me to do. So my advice is to always ask and don't question. Sometimes our human might be like, I'm not doing that. And it's like, just try it. And I like to call it the system. And the reason why I call it the system knows more about your business than you know about your business. And sometimes when it's slow, that doesn't mean work harder. That means process, receive the new information for your clients, receive the new information that helps you grow, enjoy the pause, and then take action when the expansion occurs. And you can feel it. I can actually feel like right now in October, this is a rest process. Like I'm not going to be like, I'm going to do 18 lives today. But I feel, and I can feel this because I've been on the records and, my intuition for long enough that I know November, December has this like progression coming in. I can feel it. So I know that I need to rest, process, and be prepared for that upswing. But when it comes to aligned clients and building business, I literally ask every day, what am I meant to do? And, there was a point where I had a whole brick and mortar in Atlanta. It was very busy. And it told me to leave, just close shop and do everything online. Online was only like 30 or 40% of my business. When I moved to Colorado, it filled up immediately. It's like you have to like follow that constantly and it's scary at first. It's like this is not how people live. And I did corporate America. I know I've done the whole thing. And that was a very hard shift for me. But now I don't even question. I'm like, okay, yeah, got it. Yes. So that's how I do it. I think it might be a little bit different for each person, but I guess the best thing that you can take with what I'm saying is be open to your own process and what the Akashic Records wants you to do.
I love that. And I'll add in, be gentle with yourself because a lot of times like the human like so like 100% of my business is also divinely channeled through the Akashic Records, and I still have like pages of notes from 6 months ago that they want me to do. But like my human self, it's like it takes time to feel safe in that, or feel it takes time to record that when I'm doing other things. And so just knowing that like when it is ready to come forward, then that download will come and you will have time and space for that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the other limiting belief system that I was in was assuming that I knew what everything would look like the structure and who's coming in. And I now look at it, everything is possible. I'm open to anything, and I'm loosely planning and co-creating with the Akashic Records and God all the time.
I love that. Like, everyone's like, oh, I need to do a year structure and what it's going to look like. And I'm the same. Like, I'll have an idea. I'll feel into the month of what the Akashic Records wants. But typically it's like, it's very what you said, loose.
Mhm.
Like, I have an idea what, next month's going to be more coaching. Next month, the month after is going to be more Akashic, Reiki, whatever. But definitely like I'm co-creating it. I just know what's meant to come through is going to be divinely structured, whatever that looks like. And I don't have like a current idea of what that is, and just following like the threads
Yeah.
that are given.
Yeah. And yeah, one additional thing, because this is a new thing that popped up. I had a friend that was saying like, you need to make this more mainstream. You need to find ways to make this more mainstream. And, old me, if I wasn't in the records, I'd be like, you're absolutely right. That makes total sense. And right when they said it, I got put back into myself, into my channel, and they said, no way. It was like, you're where you're meant to be. You're supposed to be right here. And it's not time for that. It's time for what you're doing right now. And if I didn't have my channel, I would have been on some path going, trying to make it. And I saw how little that could have driven me into that direction. And it's just wild. It is something that's coming into the future. Like, that's why it's so appealing, because it does feel like in the next 20, 30 years, Akashic Records is going to be like yoga. Like, it's just going to be on, people are going to be doing it. But I got that immediate jolt back into myself because I've stayed in such integrity with the records that it stays in integrity with me. It catches me before I wasn't even in a channel mode. It was like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Nope.
And that's one thing that the Akashic Records has really helped me stabilize within myself. Like, a lot of people are going to have ideas of what your business should look like, or suggestions, and the things that you're doing will sound crazy or look crazy. But it's like, no, like I trust that this is for my highest good, for my business's highest good, and I have to just stick with it. And it usually comes into fruition, it usually comes into abundance and all the things. So it's like just trusting that internal wisdom and guidance and map versus
Totally.
being influenced by others that might not feel as aligned.
Yeah. And that might be a line for them, right? They're sharing what they're getting. And it's so different for each person. You can't,
Mhm.
it's not a one size fits all whatsoever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. All right. So, is there anything else that you want to share that might be coming up that would help the collective as we pivot to this new earth heart frequency, place?
Yeah. What I'm feeling into is a lot of people feel like they need to be prepared in order to start this journey. And it's actually the opposite. It's feeling not prepared. It's being in the space of, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Or I need this. Anyone that opens up the Akashic Records or wants to open up the Akashic Records, they know viscerally. It's just in them. They know it. The only thing that's ever holding us back is our mind being like, oh, well, I need to prepare, or I need to meditate more, or, oh, I'm too busy. And it's like, no, the minute that you open them, the minute that you tap into your intuition, that's where limitless comes into play. That's when you are the universe is creating space for you because it's like, oh, you're ready. You're doing it. Even if you're not doing it perfectly, it's like you're in it. You're practicing. Okay, let's find ways to make your life more balanced. Let's give you more ease and grace in your life. So I hear that a lot. I hear, well, I'm not ready or it's not time. And it's like, it's always time. Just like with meditation, it's always time to meditate. There's not, I don't have enough time for that. When you make these things a priority, they make you a priority.
Wow, that
Yeah.
was really powerful. I highly recommend April's mentorship and her teachings. Like right immediately after we finished our sessions, I was already giving readings within that month. So if anyone's looking for a teacher or a mentor, we'll leave April's information in the show notes. But for anyone who's driving, where can everyone find you?
I am Akashic April on every single social media platform. So YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, LinkedIn. And you can also find me at April Curry, mykajabi.com. I'll have the website. So it's, nice and you could just click on it. What I'm currently doing is this intuitive membership, and it allows people to get into the frequencies of Reiki, which allows you to tap into your intuition. And we're doing intuition development every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. PT. Yeah, that's really where everything starts with me, is just showing up to those events and seeing how effortless your life begins to change just by taking initiative and showing up for yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, April,
Yeah.
for joining us, sharing your divine wisdom.
Loved teaching you, and I love watching you do your thing. It's just my favorite. I love it so much. It's just like, that's what I live for. I'm like, get it, girl.
You're the best. Oh, I love it. Well, we're going to share with so many people and activate, and it's just sharing this beautiful Akashic wisdom with everyone.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And until next time.
All right. Thank you, Dani.
Bye.